Now, our guest today is no stranger to portraying iconic characters, from starring as Haley Cropper in Coronation Street, the first ever transgender character in a British soap, to Suzanne, the wife of Alan Bates, in the award-winning drama Mr. Bates versus the Post Office. Here to tell us why her new role is her hardest yet, please welcome Julie Hesmondhalgh. So good. Does it sort of feel like coming back home a bit still, Julie, after all those years on Loose Women? Does it still feel nice and familiar?
Oh, it really does. And I think I came on, I was about 5 years ago I came on last to flog some play I was doing then. So, no, it's always lovely to come back. It really is.
Well, we're delighted to have you here. And this play, it's an incredibly powerful piece of work, Julie, and it's called Punch. It's based on a true story. It's run until the 26th of April at the Young Vic Theatre in London. Tell us about this real-life version of this story.
Well,
it's really compelling.
It is a really amazing story and actually fits in really well with what you've been talking about toxic masculinity and role models and, you know, the real huge issues that are facing young men now. It's about a young man who punched another young man on a night out in Nottingham. It's a true story. And he subsequently died from his injuries. It's a very common thing, is the one punch. And over time, the parents of the victim, James, John and David, and I played John, engaged the perpetrator, Jacob Dunn, in restorative justice, which is an amazing thing where over time, and it's there for the victims, actually, you know, more than the perpetrators, but in this case, both really, really gained from it. You have correspondence and communication about what actually happened, and in some cases there is a meeting, and that happened with John and David and Jacob. And subsequently, Jacob turned his life around completely, went back to school, got a degree, got a first in criminology at university. And now John and Jacob share a platform, going into schools and prisons and talking to young people. It's really amazing. About alcohol-related violence, the one punch, about the criminal justice system, which doesn't serve young men at all. There's a huge part of the play that is about his time in prison and about actually that exacerbated, if, you know, the feelings of revenge and having to fit in and having to be a certain toughen up. And he was actually quite a sensitive young man in lots of ways. And the parents, John and David, were absolutely outraged by the shortness of his sentence, which is completely understandable, and found a way through the bitterness and frustration and anger to get to this place of saying, well, this isn't serving us or anybody else. We need to find a different way. And lots of people that I've met through doing this play, actually, which has been a real incredible privilege, have got to this place of forgiveness, which is a huge word. And far from being this sort of wafty, liberal sort of concept, it has teeth.
Because you're carrying bitterness otherwise, aren't you? And it harms you in the long run.
Exactly.
Do you feel an extra pressure when you're portraying somebody like you did in Mr. Bates versus the Post Office as well? Real people.
And this is the third time I've done it, actually. I played Sylvia Lancaster, who was another mum who lost her child to a violent crime. And it does feel like a huge responsibility. And also it's scary in a way. I mean, Jacob, you know, who hit the young man, has been very involved in the process. It's a James Graham play, but it's based on Jacob's memoir. But John and David came into the process much later, and we met them, you know, halfway through rehearsals in Nottingham. And actually, one of the hardest things I've ever done is doing a run-through of the play in a really well-lit rehearsal room with David and John sitting there. And that actually, it was a really dark moment for me, because I've never felt as... It felt borderline exploitative. I was acting out some of the worst moments of their life, while they were sitting there. But because they are such incredible, I mean, very ordinary, but incredible, generous and gracious people, they understood the need to tell this story for it to reach a wider audience. And as we know from all these things and from adolescence, which I know you've been talking about a lot, telling these stories is... You know, this is why we need to fight for the arts constantly. It's such a way of getting stories to a wider audience. And for us to... I mean, James Graham, the writer, always talks about the telly as a tool for empathy. It's an empathy box because you actually are required, and the same in theatre, to put yourself in other people's shoes. Not always the easy one. I mean, I think we could all sort of imagine how it would feel, you know, to lose someone in that way and how angry would be and frustrated, but actually Jacob's shoes too, and to see how he got to that point.
I mean, you say it, and it's, you know, you said you've done 3 where it's, you know, it's real reality. How do you, 1, prepare yourself to do that, and 2, actually detach yourself when you've walked away? It must feel like there's a bit of you that's just been taken from being so involved.
Well, I mean, when I did Black Roses, which was about Sophie and Sylvia Lancaster in Manchester, that was a massive lesson in this, because I'd come off stage and people would be like, how can you put yourself through that every night, you know, that sort of loss and everything. And the real Sylvia would be there in the foyer, like selling, you know, wristbands and merch and talking to people who were desperate to talk to her, you know. And I thought, you know, I can't go out there and just be like, oh, sorry, I just need to, like, you lie down now. You know, it really gave me a lesson in, like, right, you know, this is, it's actually, I can't indulge in this. It's just, I've just got to be a storyteller and do the best I can. And I love this stuff. I love talking about the issues, you know, that's kind of what I'm good for, you know.
It's just the difference that it does make. Like, we talk about the post office, Mr. Bates. I mean, here we are a year on, and, like, really, no one knew the full extent of any of that story unless we had watched it on this documentary.
Well, it had been around for decades, and nobody had really engaged with it.
No one
and then
engaged.
Suddenly it goes on the telly, and everybody goes, oh, my goodness me.
That's why it's so dangerous to underestimate the power of excellent drama. 26 million people have watched Adolescence. How else could you reach that amount of... And the conversations that have gone on and on.
Massive, world-changing, society-changing conversations, you know, where we're just... It really is, it's... And I feel like my whole career has been about that and seeing examples of it happening all the time, sometimes on a really small scale, you know, in a studio theatre where someone has just experienced something differently and been made to think about something differently in a completely new way, you know, and that's as important as, like, 26 million people suddenly going... Suddenly the scales falling from their eyes and going like, oh, what is on our children's phones? You know, it's like, you know, it's about time we really took that on, you know.
Where is the play going to be at?
Well, it's at the Young Vic at the moment. There's talk of it moving on to another place.
Please, God, because I can't get a ticket, and I know her, I've begged.
I know. It's like, no special favours here, Nadia. It's really, really hard to get a ticket. And it's going to Broadway as well, which is really interesting because the American experience of it is sort of... It's such an English story. But Americans have been to see it and say it absolutely translates, and now more than ever,
of course
we need to be talking about conversations, about not being pitted against each other constantly.
Joining up, when best we can. Audrey, it's so lovely to have you here. You will stay with us for another bit. We can't let you sneak off just yet. Can we remind you of the last... Well, the early days of you first on Loose Women. Can we do that this year? In the year 2000, folks.
Slightly blind.
We're taking a very short break now, but join us in a few minutes when we'll be finding out how Casualty star Rebecca Wheatley managed to move from medicine to music.
Plus, we'll be taking your calls, and we've already heard from one caller whose boyfriend has got an incredible present coming for his birthday on Saturday. Find out what it is after the break.
Exactly the same.
I was talking like the Queen. Who was
that? I was talking like the Queen, and I want to know what the present was coming at the weekend.
Who knows? Who knows? Oh my God, I can't remember what I did yesterday.
OK, can you two take us to break? Let's recreate that beautiful moment, OK? Off you go.
After the break, we're continuing our trip down memory lane to when I was here 25 years ago, having just turned 15, no, 30.
But when it comes to ageing, what are the things that make you feel your age? We'll be revealing ours right after this.